What's up, guys? If you are thinking of going to India, then you are in the right place. In this guide, I will cover everything you need to know, from visa requirements to safety in India and avoiding the dreaded Delhi belly. This is a one-stop guide to ensure your journey goes as smooth as possible. If you are familiar with our channel, you might be wondering where Denzel is. Well, I actually went to India as a solo trip because Denzel was busy playing basketball. So I will be giving you all my top tips from my first-hand experience in India.
But don't worry, guys, I'm still here making sure everything's looking good behind the camera. If you can do a massive favor for us, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and keep producing this dope content.
This is quite a long guide, so as always, timestamps will be down below for easy navigation, and if you do have any questions, then stick them in the comments. Let's dive in with the important stuff, entry requirements. Firstly, in order to enter India, you must have at least 6 months left on your passport and at least 2 blank pages. Secondly, everyone who enters India must have a visa unless you are an overseas citizen. There are a number of different visa categories, so you need to be sure you get the right one. At the time of making this video, over 160 countries are eligible to apply for the online e-visa. And if you are eligible, this is by far the easiest option. I'm from the UK, so I applied for this online e-visa, and it was a 30-day visa for tourism. We have linked the Bureau of Immigration for India website down below where you can check if you're eligible and start the application process. One really important tip though is to make sure that you only use this website. Like I said, we will link it, and this is what it looks like on screen. We have actually heard of a lot of people that are getting scammed by either fake websites or websites that charge significantly more to get the visa. For reference, this 30-day visa cost me $25 US. I recommend setting aside at least an hour to do the application as it is quite lengthy. And one section that does confuse a lot of people is where they ask for a reference. For this, it can just be the hotel name and address of where you're staying for your first night, or it could be the address of a friend or relative. Finally, once your visa is approved, make sure to print it out as they often want to see a hard copy. And for me, the entire process from application to approval took less than a week. But I would recommend applying at least a month in advance just to be safe. Next up is vaccines. And the main thing to consider here is if you come from a yellow fever or polio affected country. In that case, you will need a certificate to prove that you have had a vaccination against these. For full details about recommended vaccinations, see Travel Health Pro's India Guide, which we have linked down below. Moving on to the best time to visit India. Now, India is a huge country, so as you can imagine, this will vary quite a bit depending on where you want to go. However, in general, the best time of year to visit all of India would be in the winter months from October to March. Here, the weather is much cooler, ranging from around 20 degrees to 35 degrees Celsius. This is significantly different to the summer, where you're looking at like 45 degrees to 50 degrees Celsius. So I would advise avoiding the summer. However, one other very significant thing to consider is smog season. This is where the air quality and the visibility is very, very poor due to things like crop burning and other factors. I would strongly advise avoiding visiting at this time of year, and that is typically from about November to January, so it does coincide with those winter months. So probably the absolute best times to visit India would be maybe October or February and March, so you can avoid the smog. Moving on to the currency in India. The main currency in India is the Indian rupee, and $1 is about 86 Indian rupees. And for our fellow Brits, £1 is about 110 Indian rupees. It is advisable to carry cash most places, as card is not always accepted, and you will find that you probably need cash quite a lot in India. I would also advise always carrying some small change because prices in India can be very specific. For example, 502 rupees. And if you don't have the exact change, you might not be given it. Okay, so just keep your little coins.
Walking in now, we've just got our tickets. It is 502 rupees per ticket. If you don't have small change, they probably won't give you change, so just a heads up, bring 2 rupees to the fort.
That brings us on nicely to the ATMs in India. It can be quite tricky to find working ATMs in India. I would therefore recommend taking a good amount out at the airport, as these tend to work well and carry larger amounts of cash. If you do need to top up, your best bet is the larger cities, and I would recommend asking your hotel or trusted locals about the best ATMs to go to. It is possible to pay with card, especially in restaurants and more touristy areas. And I used 2 different types of money travel cards in India. One was Chase card and Revolut. Both of these are fantastic options for different reasons. Chase applies the MasterCard exchange rate to any transactions done in local currency and charges no fees, whereas Revolut applies the even better interbank exchange rate but does charge fees on the weekend if you are on their free plan. We have popped links down below to both of these options if you are interested in using those cards. One really important tip, however, is just to make sure that you decline the conversion offered at the ATM or when paying a bill, and let your card do the conversion for you. Otherwise, the currency exchange rate will be much poorer than what the card offers. That brings us on nicely to budget. Overall, India is an extremely affordable country. However, India is a country with one of the biggest wealth gaps in the world, so you can get everything from very budget to extreme luxury. So how much you spend really is up to you. Overall, if you are more of a budget backpacker, you can get away with anything from $20 to $50 a day for all of your food, travel, and accommodation. Next up is tour options in India. Now, many people do actually choose to do a guided tour around India. If you choose to do this, your expenses will be a little bit higher. However, it is still really affordable, and it takes the stress out of planning and also does improve safety a little bit when you're traveling around India. One great option for a 2-week tour around India is with a company called One Life Adventures. We absolutely love their tours and have done a number of different trips with them, and their India itinerary takes you all around the Golden Triangle plus some added extras, which is really cool. If you are interested in doing a tour like this, you can use our code FrequentFlyer15 for 15% off any tour with One Life Adventures, and we have linked the India tour down below for you to check out. With our discount applied, and at the time of making this video, that 2-week tour is actually just over $1,000 for 2 weeks. Shorter guided trips of the Golden Circle do exist, and these can be as little as $300 or less for 5 or 6 days. So we've included some other great options as well if you want to check them out. Next up is traffic, and guys, it is pretty crazy, I can't lie. Especially in the bigger cities such as Delhi and Jaipur, we are talking standstill traffic, tuk-tuks everywhere, rickshaws everywhere, cars everywhere. It can be very chaotic.
Delhi traffic is no joke, guys. Are you ready? This is Delhi traffic. Oh, that is squeaky bum time. Look at that. Guys, that is, oh.
So I would just say plan ahead well and try and avoid rush hours and peak traffic times. One of the best suggestions I have to help with this is to use the metro, which I used quite a few times when I was in India and had a fantastic experience. It's really easy to use, super cost effective, and so much quicker during peak traffic hours. So consider that. It is also worth noting, guys, that the traffic is very loud. Hooting a car horn is basically India's unofficial national anthem, but don't worry, you will get used to it after a while.
People are pipping all the time, constantly. It is wild. Definitely thrown into local life. Pipping is their way of communicating.
Next up is language. India officially recognizes 22 different languages, but there are hundreds of other regional languages. Hindi is the most common language, but English is widely spoken throughout India, especially in the more touristy areas. So if you are an English speaker, you shouldn't have any problem getting around. This brings us on to culture. Hinduism is by far the most common religion in India, accounting for about 80% of the population. However, there are many other religions in India, including a large Muslim population. There's also Christianity, Sikhism, Buddhism, and Jainism, as well as many others. India is actually one of the most culturally and religiously diverse countries in the world, and you will see evidence of this as you travel around the country in the architecture, in the food, and the traditional dress. It's really interesting to experience. You can also witness the culture of India during many of its religious events, some of the most famous being Holi, the Festival of Colours, and Diwali. I was actually in India during Diwali, and it was an amazing experience. I highly recommend visiting in late October, early November to experience this if you can. Just be mindful though that the dates actually do change slightly each year, so obviously check ahead to see when it is on. Next up is what to pack. Now, we have actually written a free guide on everything we would recommend taking to India, so we will link that below, but here are some of our top recommendations. Lightweight, loose-fitting trousers, t-shirts, sunscreen, bug spray, some trainers or closed-toe shoes, and maybe some travel sickness pills or Imodium will be some of the key essentials. But like I said, the full India packing list is down below, so check that one out. That brings us on nicely to dress code. Now, like I said, India is an extremely religiously diverse country, and in general, people do dress more modestly. While this is not enforced everywhere, this is something to consider. For certain famous religious sites, such as the Jama Masjid, you will be expected to cover your shoulders and your knees. And in the Sikh Gurudwaras, for example, you will be also expected to cover your head. But don't worry, if you don't come prepared or you don't have a headscarf, they do provide them on site. Next up is probably one of the most common questions I have been asked since coming back from India, and that is how to avoid Delhi belly. Firstly, I do want to say that it's definitely possible to visit India and not get Delhi belly, but many people do get sick, so I want to give you some of my top tips.
Before Get gets into those top tips, I'm just here to remind you lot to subscribe, like, and comment down below for us. All right, carry on.
Thank you. So tip number one is to not drink the tap water and only drink bottled water. Now, this one may seem really obvious, but there are a few ways you can slip up. So I'm gonna go through them. Firstly, be careful when brushing your teeth. Ideally, if you are worried, brush your teeth with bottled water and try and avoid ingesting water in the shower. Secondly, hotels often provide cups of water or welcome drinks. These are typically made with filtered water, which most Indians do drink. And I actually drank this and was absolutely fine. However, if you do think you have a bit of a sensitive stomach, then just stick to bottled water only and don't drink this either. Another really important thing to note is to make sure that when you do buy bottled water, it is sealed and that when you open it, you hear it click, because there is a bit of a scam in India where people will reuse the water bottles and fill them with tap water. So that can catch some people out. So just make sure you always hear a click as you open your bottle and you should be absolutely fine. Lastly, be very careful with ice. Always ask if the ice is made with bottled water, and if in doubt, leave it out. Another question that I've been asked loads since coming back from India is about the safety of the street food. So much so, in fact, that we've actually dedicated an entire free guide to this topic, which I will link below, but here are some of my other top tips to help avoid getting poorly. The absolute number one tip I can give to eat street food safely is to opt for busy stalls with a high turnover. This firstly acts as quality assurance. If there's lots of people waiting in line, it's usually a good sign that the food is not only delicious, but it's safe to eat. But also it means that the ingredients are fresher, the food is served quicker, and this also means that often it is safer. My second top tip, if you want to eat street food in India, is to book a guided tour, because these tours are honestly really affordable. They're super cheap, but what it means is that you're gonna get a local guide who knows where to go, who often guides Westerners regularly that may have slightly more sensitive stomachs. So they're gonna know the places that are safe for Westerners to go. It's pretty much the surefire way to make sure that you're gonna be okay. So I'll link a couple of really great options for guided street food tours in both Delhi and Jaipur down below. Lastly, if you really want to reduce your risk of getting poorly, then you can try eating vegetarian in India. Now, of course, it's still possible to get poorly from vegetarian food, but the risk tends to be lower than when consuming meat. And also, India has the largest population of vegetarians in the world, so you're not going to be short of options. Speaking of getting poorly, that brings me on to travel insurance and pharmacies. Now, while travel insurance is not compulsory to enter India, I highly recommend you cover yourself, especially because people can get poorly. And if you are doing like a 2 to 3 week trip, you can just head to a general comparison site like Compare the Market and pick the best cover for your dates. However, if you are traveling to India as part of a longer backpacking trip or you're a digital nomad, then I would highly recommend looking into Safety Wing. This is a travel insurance that's a monthly subscription and it's super affordable, perfect for those that are traveling for much longer periods. One incredible feature of Safety Wing is that if you forget to buy travel insurance, you can actually purchase it while abroad, which very few travel insurance companies will let you do. So that's incredible. They also have really good support and super easy claims process. So if you'd like to look into that option, we will pop a link down below. It's also worth noting that pharmacies in India are incredible. I mean, amazing. I use them and you can pretty much buy any antibiotic over the counter. Now, you probably want to know what you're doing and it's always recommended to seek medical advice, but this is certainly an option if you are struggling. Next up is safety for women. Now, this has been quite a hot topic of discussion in the media of late when it comes to India, and it's certainly something that you want to consider if you are a female looking to travel to India. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, I actually traveled to India without Denzel, so it was a solo travel, but for the majority of the time, I was with friends or in a group. So I would recommend that if you are a solo female traveler. I did, however, venture into Delhi on my own at night time and vlogged the experience on one particular evening. I will link that video here so you can check out my first-hand experience and see what it was like to be a female on their own in India. Overall, I personally felt safe throughout my entire trip in India and had a wonderful time. However, I am aware that that is not everyone's experience. My main advice would be that if you are a solo traveler, especially a solo female traveler, to look into booking a group tour or traveling with friends. It will make you feel a lot more assured and increase your safety. If you do, however, decide to travel alone, speak to some locals, make sure you know the safe places to go and the slightly unsafe places to go, and just exercise general caution, especially at night. Overall, the people in India are absolutely wonderful. They are so kind, so lovely, so hospitable. All they want to do is say hello, show you their beautiful country. And really, I don't want the media to put you off from traveling to this incredible place. Just exercise caution like you would do anywhere and plan ahead carefully. This brings me on to selfies. Now, it is actually very common to be asked for selfies or for pictures as a foreigner in India. This is simply because many locals may have not interacted with foreigners before and it's a new experience for them. I actually found these experiences really wholesome and a lovely way to meet people. However, some others did report finding this quite intimidating. One of the top tips I have for this is if you feel like you might be overwhelmed with this type of experience, try and go in a group. I know I keep saying that, but when you are in a group of people, it's so much less intimidating and actually quite freeing just to be able to speak to the locals, but know that you're safe. But I do know that some people traveling on their own have found it really overwhelming. So just something to consider. Speaking of selfies, that brings us on nicely to cameras and tripods. One thing that I was not aware of before traveling to India is how strict certain attractions can be when it comes to cameras and more specifically tripods. The rules are not very clear and they can change regularly, but in general, tripods can be confiscated, microphones can be confiscated, and in some cases, so can cameras. So I'll have a few top tips to help avoid that happening. Firstly, if you use a stick for any reason, so for example, if you're a vlogger or your camera is on a stick, make sure that stick does not have a tripod attached to it or doesn't turn into a tripod. They will check and they will remove it, and then you'll be left with kind of awkwardly palming your camera. So I would advise buying a stick without a tripod, so just literally a plain stick before you go. So then you can hopefully keep your camera on the stick, basically. So loopy at a time, here's one I prepared earlier. This is a GoPro handle. It's called the Voltra, and this is a tripod. So it turns into a tripod. This will probably be confiscated in many locations in India or the main attractions. However, if you just buy a plain stick for your GoPro without a tripod, you should be okay. Top tip. Tip number 2 is generally, the fancier the camera looks, the more likely you are to run into issues. So for example, if you have big microphones on your cameras or things you can remove, if you can remove them beforehand, you probably stand less chance of encountering a problem. These rules are very vague, which is why this is very vague, but these were just the top tips that were given to me out there. And it can change, you might have no issues, and then another day you might have lots of issues. But lots of the places that do confiscate camera equipment, they do have specific lockers and areas to keep it stored, so you can still go inside and come back out and collect it at the end. One example is they literally took the wind muff off the top of my GoPro, but still allowed me to go in, and then I collected that on the way out. So who knows what might be causing problem, but just be prepared. And they nearly always let phones go. So phones should be fine as backup, worst case scenario. That brings me on to another question I've been asked a lot since coming from India, and that is, can you take a drone to India? The online advice about this is extremely confusing. Some say yes, some say no. It's like a minefield of information. But I can conclusively say at the time of making this video, no, officially foreigners cannot take a drone to India. There is numerous reasons for this. One of them is an issue about importing drones, and sometimes they will class bringing your own drone into India as importing the drone. And secondly, only Indians with an Indian ID card and passport can actually register the drone in India to be able to legally fly it. So there's multiple layers of red tape here. We do actually know numerous people who have successfully taken their drones to India and been able to capture some incredible footage. So that's why it can be very confusing. I've actually written a really detailed guide on this to help with this matter. So if you are a drone pilot and you're thinking of going to India, I would highly recommend checking that out. It's free before you go, just to clear up any confusion. It's down below. Next up is SIM cards and internet. I highly recommend either purchasing a data SIM card in the airport as soon as you arrive in India, or getting an eSIM in advance, because you will probably rely on data quite a lot in India. If you decide to buy a data SIM on arrival, I would recommend going with Airtel. I used them and generally had fantastic coverage throughout Rajasthan. However, I would recommend preloading the card with all the data you think you will need for your entire trip, because it can be quite tricky to add additional data in the app afterwards. You can do this if you're a local, so you could always ask someone to help you if needed. One really important thing to note though, and I learned this the hard way, is that when I arrived in Delhi airport, there were actually no working cash machines. And the Airtel counter only accepted cash. So that meant that the only option was to use the very expensive money exchange counter to be able to pay for the data SIM. There was a working cash machine directly outside the airport, but once you leave, you're not allowed back in. So there's two ways around this. Either make sure that you take Indian rupee with you on the plane, so you have some to buy your data SIM when you arrive, or consider avoiding the hassle and just buying an eSIM in advance. If you do decide to go with an eSIM, we highly recommend Nomad. They offer great coverage in many countries worldwide, including India. And you can use our code, which I'll stick on the screen right here, for $5 off any purchase. And that's valid for the first 5 people to use that code. We will link the Nomad eSIM plans down below. On the topic of data and Wi-Fi, I would recommend using a VPN if you are going to India. This generally protects your location and protects you when you are surfing on Wi-Fi and public data. We use NordVPN, which is absolutely fantastic. And I've stuck a link down below, which would give you 3 months free if you choose to use it. Next up is tipping in India. While not compulsory, tipping culture is massive in India, to the point where it is really expected. Typical amount is around 10% of the bill for things like hotels, taxis, and restaurants. However, for services such as housekeeping, porterage, and concierge, tipping is also routine. So bear this in mind. For example, if someone offers to take your bags, it would be polite to tip them afterwards. Moving on to scams in India, and this is another one that I have been asked about a lot since coming back. Overall, I personally did not have many issues, or any issues really, but I do have a few top tips. Firstly, this did not happen to me, but some ATMs abroad, and including India, they can be dodgy and have scams running behind them. So in general in India, the best ones to use are in the air-conditioned rooms, and they usually have a security guard stood outside. If in doubt, ask a trusted local or your hotel about the best ones to go, or try and take out as much as you can just outside the airport. As an additional safety measure, I would also recommend freezing your card temporarily before and after any transaction abroad. Secondly, at a number of tourist attractions, for example at the Taj Mahal, people will be present offering to take photos of you. Now, even if they say that this is a service that's for free, they will always expect payment. Now, that's actually fine, especially if you make sure you agree the price in advance. I actually took advantage of this because I was traveling on my own without Denzel, and I got some wonderful footage, and they really know the angles and they know what to do. But make sure upfront you agree, this is what I'm paying, and then I paid that without any issue. Lastly, when booking taxis in India, I highly recommend using the Uber app. This is the safest way to travel around. You get assurance of price and that you've got a certified driver. If any of the drivers do ask you to pay in cash rather than through the app, I would probably say no to this and just book another driver through the Uber app. It's especially important to book through Uber when you're getting a taxi from the airport, as I have heard of a number of different scams that could be running here. And overall, if you just stick to booking via an app rather than hailing cabs, you're much more likely to be safe. Last but certainly not least is where to visit in India. Now, this topic could be an entire video in its own right. And in fact, we will probably make one and link it for you. I, however, mainly did visit the Golden Triangle in Rajasthan, which is quite a famous route for many people to do. And if it's your first time going to India, I think it's a great place to start. I had a wonderful time. However, many of our wonderful Indian subscribers have let us know about so many other incredible places in India. You can see the comments throughout so many of our videos with all the recommendations. And we have heard that the south of India is beautiful, really up north in India is stunning with the mountain ranges. So there is so much to see and do. I would recommend checking out the comments and having a look at that, because we want to go back to India and take up some of these recommendations ourselves. These top tips should give you a really great place to start if this is your first time visiting India. And I really hope it has been helpful. But of course, if you have any other queries or comments, then do let us know. We will try and reply to everything. Big love, guys. Peace.